Hello! Today we're going to be talking about the top 5 heroes to build as your first 10-star. Last week's top 5 we were taking a look at heroes to build to 10-star to use as food that can also support your already built E5s. Well, this video is for people a little earlier in the game that haven't got anything more than a 9-star hero and are curious who they should be chasing as a first 10-star. If you don't already know, it's a very bad practice to build elite heroes early on because it's quite hard to get copies of them and you can end up throwing a lot of your food and resources into these heroes and then stop yourself building an E5 later on, unless of course you're prepared to feed good heroes in their 9 and 10-star forms. If all of that went over your head and you're not sure what I'm talking about, go check out my guide to building your first E5. I'll link it up there in the top corner of the screen, and hopefully that'll give you some more understanding about how to approach the early game. Either way, one of the most fundamental parts of the early game is building a first 10-star. Now, for some people who get very lucky, you can actually build the hero you're hoping to build as your first E5 as your first 10-star, and we did that in the second series of the free-to-play season. So if you go and check that out, you'll see that we actually managed to build Ithaca as our first 10-star, and then just eventually fed food into her to build her to E5. However, it's not always that easy. Sometimes you don't get copies of the heroes you're after, and sometimes you're unsure who your first E5 hero is going to be. So today's video will hopefully point you in the right direction and show you heroes that are worth building to 10-star early on that can do well in Tower of Oblivion, in Aspen Dungeon, and can help you make progress in the early game, but also you can comfortably use as food to eventually build the hero that you are hoping to build as your first E5 to E3, E4, or E5, because you need 10-star heroes to upgrade heroes to those higher enabled levels. So it's good to build heroes to 10-star anyway, but having a 10-star that's going to make you more progress means you'll get more resources, and it will all in all just help your progress in the early game. So let's go check out my top 5 list. Number 5 on this list surprises me just as much as it probably surprises you at home. It's Edgar, a hero hugely overlooked. In fact, most people just assume he's food because, well, he is, but he actually has some good qualities that make a hero viable as an early first 10-star. First of all, he's easy to use as food because he's not going to be excellent in endgame or even in mid-game, but what he offers is self-sustain. He is a standalone hero that can support himself. His active skill buffs his crit and his crit damage, so he's going to deal reliable damage, but he also restores his own health, which is great. And it's not just his active skill that heals him, also his basic attack can do it as well. It increases 30% of his crit damage, 15% speed, and then heals him for 70% of his attack. Now, that's not a lot, but actually if you build him for attack and you throw attack stuff into him, you'll actually find that your Edgar is keeping himself alive, which is what you really just want from a hero that's meant to walk into Aspen Dungeon and try and solo these waves. And also, because his passives are giving him tons and tons of bonuses, for example, when below 80% HP, his attack goes up, his crit goes up, and that lasts for 5 rounds. He's also, when a backline hero, going to increase his own attack by 30% and his crit damage and his precision, but if you make him a frontline hero, he becomes more tanky and gets more block. So obviously, as a standalone hero that's going to be your first 10-star, you're going to want to stick him on the backline. He's going to want to be one of your major damage dealers. But really, he is just a fantastic standalone hero that you think, actually, yeah, this is a hero that you want from a first 10-star. Someone that can heal, someone that can deal damage, and you can just happily use as food in the future. And he's really, really easy to pick up. So if you do happen to find yourself with 5 copies of Edgar and you're not sure who your first 10-star is going to be, give him a consideration, because he actually gives everything you want from a first 10-star, which surprises me. I'm genuinely surprised that he's made this list. So yeah, pretty cool. In 4th place, we have Karim, a hero that hopefully you expected to see on this list. Karim has always been a notorious good first 10-star. It's a shame he's not higher up on the list, but that's because there are other heroes out there that are better than Karim. And the one thing that lets Karim down is, although, sure, at 10-star, he has great healing. He's going to heal from his active skill. He's going to heal from his basic attack. It's great. He's got this inbuilt healing. He's going to get stronger as heroes die. Like, Karim has some great little passive abilities. If you look, he increases his own attack by 30% when a foe dies. So yeah, Karim knows what he's doing. He's going to heal himself up. He's going to deal a lot of damage. However, there's one small thing about Karim that lets him down. Let's go take a look at his 6-star form, and you'll see what I mean. A 6-star Karim, if we look at this final passive, has no healing at all. Basic attack targets the enemy with the lowest HP. Not very exciting. Let's look at this active skill. hits backline enemies and steals their attack. Again, no inbuilt healing. The stuff that makes Karim a good first 10-star, he only gets on his basic attack at 9-star and finally on his active skill at 10-star. The fact that he doesn't have these traits means I'm very reluctant to throw him any higher up this list than 4th place. However, if you do manage to build him to 10-star and you are getting all of the juiciness of his healing from his active skill, that added crit damage, all that beautiful stuff that's coming from his basic attack, targeting the lowest HP enemy, killing them, then increasing his attack, he's going to work wonders, and he's fantastic as a first hero because a lot of people and a lot of enemies you'll be facing are rather weak, so you can just pick them off, which is going to buff Karim, making him stronger, meaning he'll be able to heal himself and deal more damage much more reliably. And if you didn't know, Karim's healing is based on the damage he deals, so if you just focus on him as a damage dealer, he's just going to naturally heal himself up the more damage he does. So not only does his damage go up, his healing goes up as enemies die too. So this is what makes Karim such a good first 10-star. Not to mention he's really easy to pick up. He's available in basic 5-star shards, so it shouldn't be hard to find him, and if you really need him, he's available in the altar, although I would not encourage you to go picking up a Karim or any of these heroes on this list from the altar just to build them as 10 stars, because you will eventually use them as food, and fodder heroes from the altar, not a very smart thing to do. Coming in at 3rd place is Bloodblade, a hero you may have thought would have been under Karim on this list, but as I mentioned earlier with Karim's healing doesn't come online until he's 9-star and above. However, Bloodblade, let's go take a look at his 6-star form. Bloodblade is able to heal himself when enemies die, and this is quite useful in an earlier form because it means he'll be able to do Aspen Dungeon quite reliably, even just in a 6-star form, which is more than can be said about a 6-star Karim. So that's why Bloodblade is higher on this list. He's going to be more reliable whilst you're progressing to him being 10-star. Although when you do get Bloodblade to 10-star, he does get a lot of fantastic abilities. His active skill is going to deal a ton of damage, it's going to do more damage against rangers, and it's going to heal him. It also has multiple damage components, which means it's going to just cut through enemies really nicely, and has damage over time, which synergizes with Wolf because it's a bleed, so it's very, very nice. Now as well, if we look at this, his basic attack is going to bleed the target, deal extra damage, and increases his own armor break, which means he'll do more damage in PvE, which is also very useful. And as well, his precision is already pretty great, his attack's there, he's got armor break already built in, which means he's going to be cutting through enemies with high armor, and he does more damage against bleeding targets, which means he synergizes with himself because he bleeds enemies, which means he'll then deal more damage to them. So Bloodblade is just a fantastic hero. The reason he often didn't make these lists earlier on was because he was an elite hero. However, in recent months, DH Games have moved Bloodblade from his elite hero status and made him available in normal 5-star shards, which means you can pick up Bloodblade super easy now, and that means he is one of the best 10 stars you can build. He's easy to obtain, he deals a ton of damage, has great healing, and standalone is a fantastic hero to build as your first 10 star. Also, he's not that great later on, so you can happily use him as food to build your first E5. Now, the next two heroes that are going to make 2nd and 1st place are on this list mainly because you get a free copy of them just by playing the game. Bootcamp offers you a copy of Starlight, and also it offers you a copy of Vesper, just for completing the campaign. And my friends, that's huge, because Starlight and Vesper are coming in on slots number 2 and number 1 for this list. As well, even though they're not available in normal 5-star shards, Starlight and Vesper can be obtained very easily from the Brave Trial. When you complete the day mode of Brave Trial, you can go to the chest and potentially pick up a level 3 chest. And in these chests, you have a chance to get heroes. And some of those heroes can actually be Starlight and Vespers, which means Starlight and Vesper aren't actually that difficult to get copies of. As well, they're in the same faction, so replacing an Orbing in Forest actually increases the chance that you're going to get Starlights or Vespers. So again, that's another reason I've decided to put them on this list. So it's difficult to decide which is better out of Vesper and Starlight, because they're both really, really good at what they do. Starlight is able to deal a massive active skill that's split across all enemies, so the fewer enemies they are, the more damage she'll do. Also, the fewer enemies they are, it means people have died, and she also buffs herself as enemies dies. Not to mention she heals herself when people die, which is fantastic, so she keeps stockpiling and becoming more and more powerful. Kind of like Karim, but she hits significantly harder, and also has some inbuilt CC, which can be useful in various game modes like Tower of Oblivion. Also, the thing that makes Starlight different from Karim is that Starlight gets buffed when any hero on the battlefield dies. including your own. So that's going to help you out if you're using a lot of weaker heroes or heroes that have abilities that buff the heroes you have when they drop below 50% health. So you can use a little cheese style team where your heroes are intentionally dying to heal Starlight and make her deal more damage. And that's going to cut you through waves in Tower of Oblivion very easily. So a 10-star Starlight, for this reason, is much higher on the list than Karim. Does it mean Karim's bad? No, it just means Starlight is an absolute wrecking ball that I would definitely consider building as a 10-star if I had multiple copies of Starlight available in the early game. And finally, number 1 on this list is Vesper, a hero that you get a copy of early on, you can get from Brave Trial, and is notorious for being exceptionally strong. The one thing that makes Vesper super powerful is when she drops below 50% HP for the first time, she removes any control effects on her, heals herself all the way back up, silences all your opponents, and then increases her own crit by 100%. And then her active skill is an absolute bomb smacker, which deals a ton of damage against opponents when you combine it with that crit that she's just gained, and also heals everybody on the field immediately, and then continuously with healing over time as well. So Vesper is a fantastic healer that will keep your team and herself alive, and then also deal a ton of damage if you build her based on crit, because the fact that she gets 100% crit from this means that if you build her with some form of crit damage, she's going to be smacking through waves in Aspen Dungeon, no problem whatsoever. A lot of people do like to build her with crit attack if you were thinking about putting a stone on her, but do bear in mind you're only building her as a 10-star to use as food, so maybe upgrading her Celestial Stone is not the best thing to do. However, she already has great inbuilt healing effect, precision, crit, HP, and attack, and she's just a fantastic hero. Also, her basic attack is going to heal her as well, and improve her overall heal effect. So basically, the more she attacks, the better her healing becomes, and eventually she will stockpile and do more damage and more healing. This makes her very difficult to kill in Aspen Dungeon because she's constantly healing herself and staying alive. And also, when she gets dropped below 50% HP, she pops herself all the way back up, which is a great little emergency activator in Aspen Dungeon, which makes her one of the best early heroes in Aspen Dungeon if you can build her to 10-star. She's fabulous, she's a great hero, and if you do manage to get 5 copies of her, she will not do you wrong. I really like Vesper in the early game. The only thing that makes her slightly hard to build is the fact that it isn't as easy to get copies of her as other heroes because she's not available in normal 5-star shards. Although with the copy you can get of her quite easily from the boot camp, and as well the copies that you will potentially pick up from Brave Trial, I don't see it as a bad idea to recommend her on this list because at the end of the day, she is fairly easy to pick up early, and if you do, she's going to absolutely shine. Now, that's the top 5 list. However, there is something I wanted to mention. There are heroes that are fantastic first 10 stars that I personally would feel comfortable using as food, but that are just a little bit too difficult to obtain. However, Brave Trial does offer interesting heroes just for getting past day mode. For example, just today, it's offering me a Horus for 30,000 on my free-to-play account. Now that's interesting because lots of people will tell you Horus is a good first E5, and that's true, he's a good first E5, but he's not the best first E5. So what I would say to you is if the events are lining up in your favor, if they're giving you Horuses in Shelter Mission, if they're giving you Horuses from Brave Trial, and if you're going in the Shadow Faction chasing copies of Eloise, Ithaca, Ticks, and also happen to stumble across a few Horuses, he is not a bad first 10-star. And I personally, in the current state of the game, as an early player, would orb and replace in the Shadow Faction, because the Shadow Faction offers the best first E5s, and the big number of them. You cannot go wrong with a Ticks just in general. A Ticks is going to help your account, not as a good first E5, but you will eventually need Ticks copies. Ithaca is amazing as a first E5, and so is Eloise. So you probably do have a good chance of stumbling across Horuses as well. Now this is my idea. If you do manage to build one of these heroes like Ithaca, right? If you get a ton of copies of Ithaca, likelihood is you're going to also stumble across Horus copies. So you can build Horus as your first 10-star whilst you save up the copies of Ithaca. Also, if you get unlucky and don't get copies of Eloise or Ithaca, you will get copies of Horus. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Now that said, these Horus copies can be used to build Horus as your first 10-star, but you could also, if you want, maybe build Horus as your first E5 if you're forced to because you don't get copies of anybody else worth building. But if you do get copies of someone else, I would say you can safely use a 10-star Horus as food, because Horus's main role in this game is to be built as a first E5. If it looks like you can build a better first E5, such as Ithaca or Eloise, then obviously you'd rather build them. So the Horus becomes redundant and basically food for your account. So building him to 10-star makes him, in my opinion, the 0 pick on this list. The secret big brain strat is to build Horus as your first 10-star, just by getting copies of him and picking him up, and then maybe, if you need to, build him as your first E5, but if you don't, just use him as food. So hopefully that'll come as advice to you. Now, those of you that don't know who Horus is, and we're just staring at a hero that you don't know how he works, basically, he's a hero that has a very, very, very good time in Sealland. Whenever a hero on the battlefield releases an active skill, he's going to gain attack and crit damage, so he buffs himself constantly. With every 3 successful blocks, Horus is going to dispel all control effects on himself and then attack back, and he also heals as well, which is fantastic based on the damage he does. And then his active skill is able to bleed, which means it could synergize with the Wolf Pet if you were thinking about building that early, although generally we do recommend you build Phoenix here on this channel. If the enemy's in the front line, he's going to deal extra damage to them, which is equal to 15% of their max HP, and if the enemy's on the back line, he's going to do a guaranteed 108% critical strike damage, which is just fantastic. So he's a massive damage dealer, reflects damage back at your opponent, he has inbuilt heal, and the only reason Horus doesn't stand up now as the best first E5 is because he's just not as good in the Void compared to other heroes, and that's the main thing you unlock when you get to E5. But as a standalone 10-star, he is fantastic. He's going to take you far in Sealland, so trust me, if you have the opportunity to build a Horus as a first 10-star, he is a great hero to go for, and therefore gets the bonus tier option on this list. A hero that is weird, right? It's something that I cannot recommend because I don't know how easy he is to pick up in the early game. But if you are seeing that he's available in Shelter Mission, if you are getting him from Brave Trial, and if you do pull some nice copies of him throughout events or from Prophet Orbs, then yeah, go ahead. Give him a build, he won't let you down. And the other hero I could maybe consider as a first 10-star, but didn't quite make this list, is Unimax 3000. I would easily use him as food, especially as a 10-star. But the thing about Unimax is in the Brave Trial, he's really expensive, and you need to complete night mode, so it's kind of difficult to justify. He's not a cheap hero to pick up, and he's not easy to pick up. Although if you do find yourself falling on copies of Unimax because, for example, let's say you're chasing a Nosuke or Penny, then sure, Unimax is also a great first 10-star that you can then comfortably use as food. Unimax offers fantastic healing, he goes in rage mode and deals a ton of damage, and if you haven't seen, this guy is basically unkillable in early game. It's so busted. A 5-star Unimax can clear easy in Aspen Dungeon on his own, and it's kind of random. Like compared to the power ratings of other Fortress heroes, like Unimax is crazy. I mean, Inosuke is also pretty darn great, but Unimax is just silly. His inbuilt heal makes him pretty much unkillable unless he's overwhelmed by damage over time, and generally assassins who can crit him. But yeah, Unimax is just a fantastic hero early on as a first 10-star, and if you are fortunate enough to stumble across 5 copies of him, I would recommend him as a hero to build as well, because you can use him as food comfortably because he's not a good first E5, and he doesn't really do anything in the endgame at the moment, but he is amazing in Aspen Dungeon. Not so good in Sealland though, but then again, few heroes are, and if he was, I'd recommend him as a first E5. But Unimax is a good one, nonetheless. I really like him, and if you do manage to get 5 copies of him, I can recommend him too. But not quite as much as I'd recommend Horus, though. Horus is the golden boy. So there you go, guys. That's my list of the heroes to build early on as good first 10 stars. Bet you weren't expecting me to throw Edgar on this list, and I bet you weren't expecting Unimax and Horus to make guest appearances right at the end. It really depends on what you manage to pick up in the early game, and a lot of what you build is just determined by your luck. And really, any hero that has inbuilt healing and good damage will do you well. There are other heroes out there that could have maybe been on this list, such as Dantalion, that do have healing and good damage, so I could recommend them too. Let me know in the comments section if you think I missed anybody out, or if there's any heroes that are rogue picks, that are elite heroes that you think could also be used as 10-star food. Maybe someone like Jara or Valkyrie. And also let me know who your first 10-star hero was in the comments section down below. And of course, guys, do not forget to hit that subscribe button to catch some more content and some more top 5s in the future. Until next time, guys, have a great week, and happy idling.